have to remove it from the house and all of those laws. So mitruma. What about truma? The truma, it says the prohibition for someone else to eat it, for a non-kohen to eat it. So the Gemara says you can't learn from truma because shekein loyhoter meklala. You never find that it's permissible. However, chelev is certain times permissible. When is chelev permissible? If it's not in an animal, if it's in a beast. From a deer, you're allowed to have the chelev. So truma is more strict. So the Gemara says actually, mikulun nami, you can't learn from anything. Shekein loyhoter mechlalan. You're trying to learn to chelev, you'll never learn anything to chelev because chelev is permissible in certain cases, so it has that leniency. You'll never be able to make a kal v'chaymer from any of the laws of the Torah to chelev. So Amar Rava, ikashali. If I have a question on Abaya that he's learning a kal v'chaymer, hakashali. This would be my question. Ha the Tanan, this that it says in the Mishnah. Pesach mila mitzvah saseh. That a korban Pesach and Mila, the bris Mila, is a positive command. And it says the punishment for them. The punishment is kares. These are exceptions. Usually kares is a negative command. Here, the two exceptions to that, that's a positive command, is a korban Pesach and Mila. If a person doesn't have a bris, or if a person willfully violates and neglects being the korban Pesach.
There's no mitzvahs lo yisaseh for these?
Right. But nevertheless, there's kares. So he asks, there's no, the rule is that there's no chatas if he doesn't do them b'shoigig. So teisi b'kal v'chaymer mi meiser. Let him learn that there should be a chatas. He'll learn a kal v'chaymer. If someone leaves over a korban over its allotted time, and if he leaves it over, there's no kares. He just left it over. Ma meiser shlayanash. If he leaves the korban over, there's no kares there. But nevertheless, there's a violation. Korban Pesach umila, the Pesach umila, she'anash, where there is a violation. Where there is a punishment. So in adin shehizer, of course, we can imply that there's going to be a violation there. What happens when there's a violation? Any negative prohibition, there's a requirement to bring a korban chatas if a person violates that. So if someone neglects bringing a korban pesach, or he neglects having a bris, he neglected a positive command. So there's a punishment of kares. He gets kares.
Amazing, obviously.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What about b'shogeg? What happens b'shogeg? So if a person neglects a positive command by mistake, there's no punishment. So he's asking, but you could imply that there should be a prohibition. Because if someone leaves over a sacrifice where there is no punishment, there's a negative prohibition. Over here where there's a punishment, for sure you can imply that there's a prohibition.
Lina?
Yeah, or meiser. Like nicer. He makes it into nicer. So this is Rava's question. Rav Ashi says, I said this in front of Rav Kana. This is a later Rav Kana. Amar Li says, you can't learn a kal v'chaymer from Meiser. Why? Meiser, if you leave it over, you can never fix the problem. However, korban Pesach, during Pesach, yesh le takana. But by the Pesach, you bring the Pesach Sheni. Right? What about Mila? Mila, I guess you have a bris.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you have a bris later. Okay. Now the Gemara asks a very important question. B'chimasirin min adin, do we create negative prohibitions because of a kal v'chaymer? Afilu man damarayin min adin, there's a machlekes. Can you create a punishment because of a kal v'chaymer, or does the Torah need to state it specifically, outright? So there's two opinions. But even according to the opinion that says that there is a punishment from a kal v'chaymer, ein masirin min adin, you can't create a prohibition from a kal v'chaymer. Elakid Rabbi Yochanan. Rather, it's according to Rabbi Yochanan. It says, "Damar asya hava hava It's not a kal v'chaimer. We know it from a pasuk. It's a gzeira shava. It says over here the word you will bring, and it says over there you will bring, or he will bring. Ma'ala halon lo yona shalom kin hiser. Just like over there, he doesn't bring unless there's a violation. Afkan lo yona shalom kin hiser. Also over here, there's no punishment unless there's a violation. What are the two things that we're discussing here? We're discussing bringing it up on an altar, where over there it says both. There's a violation and a punishment. So too by the shechita, where it says the violation, where it says the punishment, I'll understand that there's a violation also because it uses the same word by the offering of the sacrifice outside the temple. It uses that same word by the slaughtering of the sacrifice outside the temple. I'll be able to get the violation as well included in that.
So you can learn Einshim from a kal v'chaimer?
I can learn. It's machlekes if I can learn Einshim. I can't learn a violation. But here, it's not a kal v'chaimer, it's a gzeir shava, and that I'm allowed to learn. I can learn a violation from a gzeir shava. The same word that says in two places.
So if there's so basically what that means is if there's no lo yisaseh, not to get too deep, but let's just say there's a positive commandment, right, that has a punishment connected to it, and there's another positive commandment, and they share the same word in the pasuk, so you could learn from that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We don't make our own gzeir shavas. It has to be a tradition.
So kal v'chaimer no gzeir shava yet.
Kal v'chaimers, it's funny because kal v'chaimers we can make our own, but a gzeir shava we can't. So kal v'chaimer we can make our own. We don't create prohibitions either. But a gzeir shava, which is all in tradition, that could actually have a. Rava Amar Kid Rabbi Yoina. Rava says differently. He says like Rabbi Yoina. The Amar Rabbi Yoina Asya Sham Sham. We learned from two psukim, very similar. Over there, it says, "There you will bring your sacrifices," and it also says, "There you will do your sacrifices." Mala halon layana shalom kin hizer afkan layana shalom kin hizer. So we learned instead of from hava, he learns from sham sham, the same way, but it's a different word. Ashkechan muktrei pnim shehelim bachutz. We find that things that were slaughtered inside, that they were ready to be brought up on the altar. However, they were brought outside, and so the person's chayiv. Says that he did not bring it up on the altar in the tent of meeting. Mukterei chutz, but let's say it was slaughtered outside.
It says burnt outside.
Yeah, it says burnt, but it means slaughtered. Why does it use the term mukterei? What it means is things that were ready to be brought up. Mukterei means ready to be brought up on the altar. They were ready to be offered inside. So let's say mukterei chutz. Let's say things that were slaughtered outside. That means they were prepared, that to be brought up on an altar outside the temple. Minayin shehelam bachutz, that were brought up outside the temple. Minayin. How do we know that you're still chayiv? This was a machlekes Rabbi Yossi Aglili and the Chacham, but what's the source of it? Amar Rav Kana, Amar Kra. Rav Kana says, it says in the verse, "V'aleim taimar." To them you should say. Now, the verse beforehand says. The section before this was talking about things that were brought up on a altar outside the temple, and then it goes on to talk about it says first it's talking about someone that slaughters outside the temple, then it talks about someone that offers outside the temple. So it says regarding them you should say va'aleim taimar. The Gemara is learning it regarding them. You should say ala smuchem taimar, regarding those that were just said. So which means something that was slaughtered outside the temple, which that was a prohibition, and then the next section says something that's offered outside the temple, and the word that combines them is regarding them you should say. That means that regarding those things that were slaughtered outside the temple, that law will apply also if they're offered outside, the same ones, that you're still going to be a prohibition. Maskef Rava. Rava asked the question, Miksiv va'aleim? Va'aleim ksiv. Does it say va'aleim with an ayin, which means regarding them? It says va'aleim, means to them. It's a different word. It means to the Jewish people, you should say. It's not talking about regarding sacrifices. That's a different word.
Wow.
It sounds the same. What is it called to sound the same?
Homonyms. Homonym.
It sounds the same, but it's a different...
I think so, right?
but it means something totally different. Okay.
Good job, Raphael.
Someone just told me this thing. Someone was saying the story that Lot took his wife. Lot, his wife. They how do they call Lot and his wife? Anyway, it says and flee to outside the city or whatever. Anyway, at the end of it, it says Lot's wife turned around, and she turned into salt. So the child says, "What about the flea?" When he said flea, flea with E instead of EA. You know, what about the flea?
Yeah, it's funny.
Okay, so here we're saying that. Ba'aleim, we're trying to learn that someone that offers a sacrifice that was already slaughtered outside the temple, he offers it outside the temple, it's another prohibition. We're learning that because it says regarding them. We said it doesn't say regarding, it says to the Jewish people. Elaka the Tanabi Rabbi Shmuel, rather like it was taught in the Yeshiva Rabbi Shmuel. Ba'aleim taimar. It says to them you should say, and there's an extra vav there, and to them you should say, la'arif parshis, it's coming to combine the two sections. Just slaughtering and then bringing will be a continuation, where even if it was slaughtered outside the temple, you have another prohibition to offer it outside the temple. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Asya Hava Hava. We learn it from the words like Zer Shava Hava Hava Ma'ala Halon Mukter Chutz, just like over there, where it says about the slaughtering. What does it mean? By Shchutei Chutz, it's talking about things that were ready to be brought up outside the temple. Afkan, also over here, when it's brought outside the temple, it's also Mukter Chutz, it was ready to be brought outside the temple. That means it was slaughtered outside the temple, as well as if it was slaughtered inside, but that we know already. Maskefla Rabibi has a question. On this that it says in a Mishnah. Shleishim Mishesh Krisis B'Torah. It says that the Mishnah in Krisis says that there's 36 Krisis in the Torah. Shlosin V'Shev Havin, there's really 37. If you're going to say slaughtered, if you're going to say that there's two types of offering outside the temple. One is when it's slaughtered outside the temple, and one is when it's slaughtered in the temple and offered outside the temple. Depends where it was slaughtered. Those are two different things. There's really 37. The Ikha Hamayla V'Hamayla. You have two types of offering outside the temple, depending on where it's slaughtered. Where it says Kasha. That's a question. Rashi discusses over here that there's really much more, because you have the loss of Shabbos, but it's only counting it as one category. So over here, it would, for some reason, it would need to categorize it as two. Okay, we should stop here.
We caught up now?
Yeah?
Yeah.
Shkar.
Yeah, good job.
We're still behind.
Oh, we are
Still
behind.
We're doing better.
Okay.
Well.